Hello everyone, welcome back to Carlton Carnivores. You might notice that today we are out in a different location than normal, not inside in the greenhouses. And that's because the plant that I'm sharing with you guys today is a species that actually I keep outside all year round. Protected in winter because they don't quite want as cold a temperatures as we get here in winter, but nevertheless does better outside than it does indoors. It's not a carnivore today, but instead a carnivore companion. And that is Calopogon tuberosus, the grass pink orchid. And you might notice here, one of the orchids here is not pink. Instead, it is the white flowered variation. And that is just two different color variations of quite a variable species, honestly. They come basically in every shade that you can imagine between the white and an even darker pink than this. But this pink here is about the average you will see for most species, particularly in the wild. This is a species that is pretty widespread. It is found throughout the eastern half of North America, give or take. And it lives pretty much anywhere that is nice, acidic and boggy. So actual peat and sphagnum bogs, seepages, sand savannas. You'll find them growing alongside the Sarracenia. You might notice all the pitcher plants in the background here. That's where these guys live, right alongside. It is a relatively easy to find and also easy to grow species, which is why this is probably one of the main orchids that you will find people actually having success with when they're trying to grow other odd plants as well. It's terrestrial, so it doesn't have the real picky needs for exact moisture that a lot of the epiphytes do. It tolerates, of course, because it grows from Canada all the way down to Florida. It can tolerate some fairly cold conditions in winter, as well as fairly hot and humid, boggy conditions in summer. So it is quite a popular plant for people to try out, especially as one of their first orchids. It is a fairly simple plant. Each one grows from a tuber or corm down underneath the soil surface, and when they're happy, just after they flowered, oftentimes they will offshoot several young corms that will grow into new plants. But it takes them a couple of years to go from their tiny little specialized seeds that require some sort of symbiote fungus to actually sprout. A couple years past that before they actually get big enough to bloom. And then usually each tuber only saves up enough energy to bloom once, and then it takes 2 or 3 years again for it to save up energy enough to bloom again. So you want to kind of have a colony so that you actually get flowers every single year. Now, when it first starts growing in spring, it is a very, very simple plant. It produces 1, maybe 2 very slender grass or iris-like leaves. They will tend to grow up to about 8-9 inches, maybe up to a foot tall, and they're simple and green and really not a whole lot to speak of, honestly. But once those are up and the plant feels like it's got enough energy to bloom, then the excitement starts and it produces this tall, slender stalk that goes up to the raceme that has anywhere from 1 to sometimes over a dozen buds on it. And of course, they are the classic orchid flower. You have 3 main lower petals that flare out and look like your standard petals. Actually, they're probably better called tepals because the sepals and petals are both modified and they look fairly similar. But you have the 3 lower lobes and then 2 upper lobes that in this case are actually folding out to the sides. Get off of me, fly. And like all orchids, it has the one really weird modified central tepal that has all these little fuzzy parts on the front. The pollen and stigmas are just up under here, and the hope for the plant is that it's able to attract something to come in that's had pollen from another species and brush against the receptive stigmas, and the little pollinia will stick to that, and then as the insect goes further down, it hopefully grabs onto a new set of pollinia that the plant attaches to it and flies off to the next flower. Now again, this species is quite variable. This is your average coloration, kind of this nice pinky coloration. The middle tepal, of course, has a little bit of a different color. It's got a little bit paler up to the top, a little bit of the yellows and whites right around the reproductive parts of the organs. But it also, of course, can range to a very almost purplish pink coloration, and then all the way up to the various shades, very bright and pale pink, all the way, of course, to white. And I am trying to separate out my white and pink variations here into separate pots so that I can actually keep track of them a little better. Clearly one has missed me because it's growing in the same pot as this pink one, so we'll be moving that relatively shortly. But oftentimes these guys don't really do a whole lot in terms of seed set unless you're lucky and get them crossing with each other. But again, because they require some specialized fungi to associate with to really start sprouting, it's really hard to get these guys to actually sprout in cultivation. If you're lucky and you have that fungus growing in the soil, maybe it came along with the plants, you might get little baby plants sprouting up every year if you just sow those on the soil surface. Otherwise, you often have to do basically tissue culture to actually get the seeds started, so they have a really rich nutrient medium to start growing on in place of the carbon sequestration that the fungus would normally give them, because the actual seed itself doesn't have enough energy for these guys to sprout on their own. Now, this is a fairly easy species, especially as far as orchids go, to grow. And if you grow other carnivorous plants, you can simply stick these right alongside them. Out in a bog garden or in a pool like this alongside other carnivores and such, they'll be perfectly happy there. They don't need as nutrient poor a soil as the pitcher plants do, so you could pot them in like a part peat, perlite, and potting mix soil, but they will also simply do just fine, taking whatever nutrients build up from around the carnivores near them. So if you pot them in the same low nutrient peat and perlite or peat and sand mix, or even pure peat, they'll do just fine. What you don't want, though, is a whole lot of really strong minerals to build up, because that will burn the plants sometimes. So if you do see stuff building up on the soil surface, remove that. Maybe give the pot a nice wash through so that it's not building up little nasties. And then during summer, these guys can sit, again, out in full sun, outside. They are perfectly happy there. They will be the happiest out in full sun as well, as long as it's nice and moist. If you have a pot like this that's full of peat, keep the water level maybe up 1 to 2 inches so that it's below the soil level, but it's always moist down here, always wicking up moisture. You don't ever want to let it dry out. You want them to just kind of stay moderately moist at all times. In winter, if you live in a really, really cold environment, you can bring the pots inside and simply stick them, say, in an unheated greenhouse or unheated garage or shed or something, or maybe uproot them and put them all in a little plastic bag wrapped with paper towels and stick that in the fridge for a couple months. If you live in a slightly warmer condition, or you have the ability to protect them with simply like mulch or plastic cover over top to keep off the worst of the freezes, then you can simply leave them outside all winter and the natural cycles will take care of the process for you. And that's probably the easiest thing to do, honestly. Keep them moist and just leave them outdoors. They'll be perfectly fine there. In winter, if you have pots that are freezing solid, that is when you probably do want to give some sort of protection, at least, just so that the soil doesn't get say frostbit or wind bit, as it were. The wind basically taking away whatever moisture isn't locked in ice and drying things out. You want to kind of protect them from that, but otherwise it's not really something you need to worry about too much. Just keep it moist and they'll do the rest for you. So it is a very easy orchid species to start off with. And again, because it comes in so many different color forms, if you don't like the standard pink, you can probably find others that are more suitable to your tastes. Now, that is about all that I have for that species. If you have questions, certainly make sure to leave them in the comments below the video here. Give a like if you enjoyed it. Share the video with somebody else if they want to learn. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything coming up. And if you'd like to learn more about the plants and the animals that I work with, consider finding my website at carltoncarnivores.com, where the blog and database are. Follow me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Blue Sky, etc., all at Carlton Carnivores. And raising these plants is a time-consuming and expensive endeavor, as is making these videos. So if you'd like to help support the production of these videos, consider buying some of the plants or merchandise available at my website shop. or become a Patreon member where you get early access to the videos, access to the monthly seed contests that I do for paid patrons there, and other exclusive kickbacks. Or you can do, if you don't want to do a monthly subscription, you can do a one-time donation at ko-fi.com or simply contact me for other methods. But the links for most of these things will be in the video description below. Until next time though, I'm Hawken Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.